This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin. Joining me this week, two friendly sprites who promise to help guide me through the forest, Kara Shimborski.
Hey.
And a very special guest, Elsa Charretier.
Hi.
Thank you both for joining me this week. I am so very excited to talk to both of you about comics. But before we get into things, I have one quick announcement. We have a book club coming up on June 5th on our Discord. If you're not already on there, head over to ircbpodcast.com/Discord and come and chat about Sweet Tooth Volume 1 with us. My heart is ready to break with this new TV series that's coming out, so I'm rereading the comic book. I'm very excited about that. And before we get into talking about comic books, because I do have a legally mandated question to ask, I do need to ask our guest to tell us a little bit about herself. Elsa, I'm so happy that you could be here on the show. Could you tell the folks at home a little bit about who you are?
Sure, absolutely. So, hi everyone. My name is Elsa. I'm an artist and writer. I guess I can say cartoonist. I don't know whether that applies or not. Anyway, I do.
I've heard it used interchangeably. You know,
Yeah,
people say illustrator, cartoonist.
It feels fancy to say cartoonist, so I'm gonna go ahead and call myself a cartoonist. So yeah, I do comics. I worked for DC and Marvel for a number of years. Although I started out doing some indie work, and then about 3 years ago, I decided to move back to indie comics, and so since then I've been working on my own creator-owned books, and I also do Kickstarters, and I have a YouTube channel with my partner, and so basically that's what I do.
Amazing.
And you've got a brand new Patreon where people can get exclusive content from you, yeah?
Yes, I do. You know, it's a nice way to get in touch, to have a different form of communication with people that follow my work. And I post things that I don't show on social media, process stuff, and I have a newsletter over there as well, comic book curation newsletter. So yeah, lots of things on my plate.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like over the last few months, it's just there is this huge explosion of everything, Elsa, and I love it. I'm so happy to be able to see your work regularly and see all the stuff that you do on YouTube and the Patreon series. I mean, there's so much stuff. I don't understand how you manage to do all of this and also create comic books. It's incredibly impressive.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, on the YouTube channel, it's not just me. I'm doing it with my partner. He's doing the book of the work. His name is Pierrick Collinet, and he's a writer too. And we have an art studio together, and we worked on lots of books together. The Star Wars that I did with IDW were written by him. So he's doing the book of the work, basically. I just write my text and deliver them on camera, but the whole, editing and directing and all of that, it's, he's doing it. I would not be able to do it by myself.
It's so interesting that you're, and I say interesting, I mean, fabulous that you have someone that you can collaborate with in different mediums, not just the one.
Yeah, we've known each other for a long time, and we kind of moved into comics together. And so I think that a lot of things that I do, it's because we talked about it first together. And I don't know, I like working as a team, first of all, and we kind of our own tastes inform what the other person will do and vice versa. And so we kind of create everything that we do is kind of a mix of both of the things that we would like to do independently, but together it's always better, it's easier. Ultimately 1 + 1 = 3, and also we know each other very well naturally, so it's easier to work with someone that they know your strength, your what you can't do, and all of that. So of course, it's always better to do it with someone that you trust.
Absolutely, that's what
definitely
we do here. I trust you, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I trust you, Kara. I wouldn't have been able to put, you guys wouldn't have been able to put that Star Wars series together that you did had it not been for the massive amount of trust that I was able to give, because as much as I want to control every bit about this show, you guys put on a fantastic show. It's amazing. So I trust you guys implicitly, everybody on the show.
Aww.
But anyways, I have to get into this question that I've got to ask every single week, and that is, how have you been? how have comic books been? So let's just jump right back to you, Elsa. How have you been? What comic books have you been reading? All of that stuff.
I have been okay, although if I'm being totally honest, it hasn't been the best week.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm tired. It's just like we said, lots of things. It's my own fault. I don't know. I would like to stop or like slow down, but I don't seem to be able to. And mostly I'm happy about it, but sometimes it's just like, ugh, this is a bit too much. So this was a bit of a too much week. So I'm kind of beat, honestly. But I am very glad that I can turn to books whenever I feel down. And this week I've been reading a lot of books that I had bought, but didn't get a chance to read. So this is always a nice way to wind down after a tough week.
Nice. Any books in particular that you'd want to shout out for the show?
Sure. I have been catching up on my Deadly class.
Very nice.
Yeah, which is a book that I adore. Like, it's easily on my top 10 of my favorite books ever. I think it's a fantastic comic. And also, I have been reading today 2 books. They're quick to read because it's mostly pictures, of John McNaught. I don't know that I'm pronouncing his name right, but it's those are not monthly released comic books. It's more graphic novel format. I think it's No Brow that puts his books out. And so I've been reading that. It's very illustrative. It's a lot of small panels and poetic, lots of things about nature and people taking the time to look at nature and all that. And it's beautiful. It's not a tough read. It's easy to read. Gotcha. And it's just gorgeous.
Sounds like the right kind of meditative content that maybe you needed if this week was overwhelming.
Exactly.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't have been able to process like a Watchmen, for example. This would have been too much.
Totally understandable. We'll have to look those up if it's something that's a nice, easy read. I'm always looking for something like that because I feel like in comics we always want to find like the next like big thing that's gonna like really make you think, and you've got to find these deeper inner themes and stuff. But sometimes it's just nice to have a book that's just just there to kind of just read and just not have to think too hard about and just enjoy. So
yeah, exactly. And on that same theme, although it's very different, I bought the collected edition of Bone, which I had never read.
Oh, and nice.
So, yeah, that's the same sort of books, although it's very different because it's all black and white or just inks, and it's a real story, but it's mostly it reads on one level, and that's good. It is, like you said, not everything has to be like on many different levels of understanding. And so, yeah, I think I'm into like simple, easy to read books right now.
That's understandable. I think when you're doing a lot of work like analyzing art and stuff like that, like you've been doing on your YouTube channel, like I think it's nice to just sit back and kind of just take something at face value, right?
Yeah.
Well, Kara, what about you? How have you been? What kind of comic books have you been reading?
I am also exhausted, but for different reasons. So it's the end of the school year at the school where I work at, and that means lots of exams, and I'm in charge of the exams, and there's so many things that could go wrong. So I'm very forced detail oriented right now. But instead of deciding to read something chill and relaxing, I thought, let's do Moby Dick. All right, so a little bit of backstory. I recently finished listening to the audiobook version of Moby Dick because a few years ago I tried reading it and I thought halfway, but now I understand I only got about a quarter of the way through before I realized that I was just tuning out. The prose is so dense, but listening to it in audiobook form, it was more like somebody telling a story to me, and it was easier for me to absorb what was happening and
Gotcha.
to get annoyed at Herman Melville, the author, for being so descriptive. I'm like, I get it. You know a lot about whales. I get it. You put a whole chapter about the symbolism of the color white in your book about symbolism. Like, I get it. You have a lot to say. Actually, this was partially inspired by my research for our episode today with Elsa, diving into her YouTube channel, and a theme that you come back to a few times is how comics as a medium are different from the other visual mediums. And so considering adaptations, you consider the strengths of the comic book medium. And so while browsing through Hoopla to look for a comic that would spark my attention, I saw that there is an English translation of a French comic adaptation of Moby Dick. So it's like you start with
cool
English, you adapt it to a French comic book, and then you translate it back into English. I'm like, okay. So this adaptation of Moby Dick is by Christophe Chabouté. McNaught published it in France, and then Dark Horse published it in English. And all of the dialogue in this adaptation is Herman Melville's dialogue. None of it got changed. It's just interpreting the great American novel as a graphic novel instead of like 300 pages, and using the sense of the passage of time in the comic book medium to show the monotony of being at sea, and all of the action is really these shorter conversations that the sailors have, or that the infamous Captain Ahab has. And having just listened to the whole novel, it was interesting for me to read the comic adaptation and see how detail oriented the artist was. Like, there is a whole chapter in the novel where our narrator protagonist Ishmael is in a chapel in New England before he ships out on the Pequod, and it's just this whole sermon from the preacher about the biblical story of Jonah and the whale. And while the sermon is happening, Ishmael is noticing all these different memorial plaques on the wall of all these whalemen who have died at sea. And it goes on in the novel. And in this comic book adaptation, the artist was able to convey within like 4 panels everything that was happening in this huge chapter. And
the power of comic books.
Exactly.
Are you saying that it's Moby Dick but better? Because that's the bold claim.
It's not Moby Dick but better. It's Moby Dick, but maybe if you're not going to sit down and read all of Moby Dick, you can still get the sense of the story, the overarching themes of the story. If you want to read Moby Dick, but you are bored by 400 pages about different types of whale species, this is probably going to be a better solution.
Okay, so I guess that would, if you don't have the patience for that, but still you want to appear smart at a party, you should read the graphic novel adaptation, is what you're saying.
Like post COVID, the first cocktail party we all go to. Yes, I read Moby Dick during quarantine.
What did you do with your pandemic?
Well, I'm just looking through the art on this, just a preview of it. It's black and white. It looks gorgeous. It reminds me of this artist that I've loved her work for years. Who does like these very like stark charcoals almost, but obviously there's a lot more like thinner line work done. Claire Connolly is her name. She's like a New Jersey based artist. Man, I think I'm picking up this graphic novel. I didn't think I'd ever want to read Moby Dick, period. And now you've convinced me that maybe I will read a book about a boat and a whale.
The book is about obsession, Mike. It's about obsession.
Right. I mean, I know it's bigger than that. I'm going to try to read this one at face value and see what I can take from it.
I haven't read it. If it makes you feel better, I've never read it. Yeah. Okay, I probably lied once or twice saying that I had.
It's definitely one of those. It's definitely one of those books where people know the highlights and they know the characters because they've just been circulated in different media and different references for so long.
Right.
It's like, even if you haven't read it, you kind of get the idea of who Captain Ahab is, and you know Moby Dick is the whale. And it's an ocean voyage.
There's an entire concept album by like one of my favorite bands ever called Mastodon, and they do an entire Moby Dick theme album. So I know a lot about Moby Dick, I think, through listening through that music. I don't think that they're depicting the whole book, but, you know, I understand the name Captain Ahab. I know there's a whale involved in the story. So anyways, I for me, really quick, before I oust myself for being any more ignorant and naive, let me talk about some of the books that I've read recently. I read Young Shadow by Ben Spears. Brett from our Discord recommended this book before when it was on pre-order, and I was really excited to get it. The idea is Young Shadow is a street vigilante in Bolt City, helping people in his neighborhood, busting criminals and doing good work for the people in his neighborhood. When he discovers that a crime organization comprised of trust fund punks, cops, and a CEO plan to push their power in the city, Young Shadow decides he needs to stop them. And this feels like kind of a cut and dry, like just street vigilante type story. But I think that Ben Spears really tackles this book from an angle of street vigilantes don't have to be Batman or Daredevil or Spider-Man. They can be kind of like wholesome people that kind of have a chip on their shoulder, but ultimately are like very good people. And I guess maybe Spider-Man's a bad comparison. But I feel like, you know, Daredevil really fits this niche, or maybe even Punisher, of just like this street level vigilante thing. And I was really impressed overall with this book's just ability to convey an extremely lived in but fantastical style city. So this is from Fantagraphics. So there's kind of like this artsier side to the entire book. And I think that Ben Spears' art style really reminded me of, I know this sounds ridiculous, but some of the kind of like sci-fi elements of early Dragon Ball in a lot of ways, where there's just kind of these impossible buildings that you're like, that's a really cool shape. Why couldn't it be a building? Who cares if it's not structurally unsound? So there's like this fantastical like urbanism that it exists in the book that I really, really liked. The city of Bolt City feels big, but it also feels like whenever Young Shadow is on the ground, like it feels very like real and like a place that you could actually understand. So overall, this book was pretty okay. Like the story is very straightforward. Like he's got to bust some punks, and he busts some punks because they're trying to, you know, make this city worse. And the one last thing I'll say about this is that the book, the 3-tone palette of this book, it's like black, white, and yellow, is really, really amazing. Like it's striking. I think Spears' ability to like lean into this huge world with these big blocky elements, but then using like the harshness between black and yellow is really, really smart, and it creates this really interesting kind of shadowy thing. And he does something with either some sort of tool to create these really staticky like shadows that I thought he was able to like masterfully combine with just harsh blacks to really give you a distinct like feeling of darkness in the city without just drawing pages in all black. So I thought it was really cool. I probably want to check out his other work. Ben Spears apparently has this kind of in-universe story that includes Young Shadow and a bunch of other books. So I'll probably try something else out. I feel like when it comes to Fantagraphics books, you're always getting something a little different. So why not dig more into this guy's backlog?
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking at the art right now, and wow, this is unique.
Yeah, it's a super beautiful book. I mean, I think he has a really distinct style that I think is just it seems like it's almost cartoonish, but the story, its subject matter is a little bit more serious, so it adds like a really nice contrast.
I started to Google Young Shadow, and Google tried to tell me to look up Young Sheldon instead.
Oh no. Oh no. Very different. Maybe not so different. I don't know. The other book I want to talk about really quick is Dungeon Critters. This is by Natalie Reese and Sarah Gocher. This is a book that was part of a book club that I'm in, and I was really upset that I had to read it because in the book club nominations for books, I really wanted to read The Autumnlands Tooth and Claw, but this one ended up winning by a couple of votes. So I went into it kind of just being like, whatever, I'll read this other book. And it turns out it's the best book that I've read in 2020 so far, period. Whoa. Or excuse me, 2021.
All right.
Whatever year it is. The story follows this fantasy style, like anthropomorphic group of characters who kind of fit a standard role in your D&D style party. They get swept up in this mystery involving a royal family and a mysterious evil plant, and then there's some big bad that's out there. You know, you're kind of like standard like fantasy D&D story where the heroes need to save the day based on this thing, but the stakes are stacked up against them. But every single character in this book is super lovable. We've got Prince Chirp, who's an extremely excitable frog whose roguish tendencies get her in trouble constantly. Goro, who's the strongest, most fun, most mysterious snake person you've ever met. He has the best one-liners in the group. There's Rose, who's a sorceress cat who just can't seem to find the right time to say the right thing. And June, the, quote, magical botanist, aka druid dog, who's the only level-headed one in the party. So, of course, as the story goes on, everyone kind of fits these roles. And there's so much passion and character in every single page of this book. Like, I implore you to go look this up because it is so beautiful. Like this book, every single page is, you could print it out, put it on the wall. And I think the reason for that is because this originally started as a webcomic that eventually grew into a much bigger story. And the pair of creators here decided that, you know, publishing through First Second was probably the best way to do things. Yeah, this is like a really all ages book. Like there's violence and there's stakes and there's all sorts of character developments and twists and turns that I, as a 30-year-old, really loved. But I think that if I gave this to a 12-year-old kid who was just looking for a nice book to read, they would love this as much as I did. That might be because I'm a child and I enjoy childish things, but I also think that there's like a lot of really good humor in this, that it doesn't matter how old you are, you'll think this is a really good time. And it feels like a really strong modern book, like a book that was created in 2020 2021, just with the type of humor and the type of characters that are in it. And I think there's an emphasis on, like, at one point in the story with this royal family that gets involved, there's this emphasis on like the gendering of royal names, right? Like the gendering of king and queen and prince and princess and stuff like that. And why do we even do that in the first place? Which I thought was a really interesting note when you're thinking about a book that's kind of all ages. This kind of pushing this idea that like none of this stuff really matters. It's just titles. Why do we care? Mm-hmm. I thought was a really cool thing that this book was doing, and not in a way that's like boys are not this and girls are not that. It was just kind of in the story naturally. And we were talking about that quite a bit in our book club. I love this book. It's First Second constant with the bangers, and I don't understand how, but I'm so happy that they keep knocking out books like this.
They're crazy good.
Yeah. I feel like the last 3 or 4 years they've just been killing it.
It's a few years ago I was talking to an editor at New York Comic Con from First Second, and he told me that he would send me a box with their more recent books and some that were published earlier, but that they still liked a lot. And they sent me this box with maybe like 5 or 6 books inside. Oh, nice. And I have loved, and that's rare for me because I tend to like one book out of 2. I'm like, I'm not liking everything that I read, but those books were just, most of them, incredible. I was very, very surprised at the overall quality of what they're putting out.
Exactly. And it's great because I feel like a lot of those books are accessible by any like type of reader. Like you could pick this up with a lot of comics knowledge or no comics knowledge, and you'll still have a lot of fun. And it's mostly all ages, and it's mostly like leaning towards like a larger audience than what comics typically caters towards. So I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing something right over there.
Yep.
Well, it's kind of that attitude of not just putting yourself in the direct market and focusing on like a book sized format that can go in a bookshop or get sold at a book fair, or when people are buying, like, especially for these all ages books, say you have a birthday party coming up for your kid and your relatives have no idea what to get them. A lot of them are going to go into a bookstore and say, what should I get my kid? And they're going to pick visually. And it's just like a better chance of reaching a wider audience of people who are not specifically tuned in to comic books and what the comic book world is doing.
Definitely. Well, let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about comic books that are coming out in the next couple of weeks or so. Comics are coming out on May 26, 2021 here in the US. What are you both excited for this week? Let's start with you, Kara.
So in direct contrast to saying, I just read Moby Dick in graphic novel format. Looking ahead to the comic books coming out this week, top of my list, you all might remember that a few months ago I was really excited about the My Little Pony Transformers crossover comic books. And they're back. My Little Pony Transformers, The Magic of Cybertron. And issue number 2 is out this week, and the cover is just like rainbows and robots everywhere.
I mean, that sounds awesome, though.
Right? Like, sometimes I just want comics to be super fun and not have to be something serious. In that vein, there were a couple DC comics that stood out to me. There's a Stargirl Spring Break special, and the Stargirl television series on the CW is, I think, a good representation of everything I liked about DC Comics, like team-based books in the mid-2000s. And when I went to my local comic shop after binging season 1 and asked for anything Stargirl or JSA, they just kind of laughed at me because everyone's been buying those books. So excited that DC is publishing some new stuff. And I am a fan of one-shots because I like to think that most of them are accessible to new readers and cognizant of the fact that people are going to be intimidated by something like Detective Comics, which has been going for a million years, which, funnily enough, was my third quick pick, Detective Comics 1036. I know. I have like literally never read a Detective Comics issue, but there's a new Huntress costume design, and it's on the cover of that one. There's this new Batman and Huntress story, and Mariko Tamaki is the writer. And so right there, I'm already sold.
That's exciting.
Yeah. And Huntress gets a costume redesign every few years. She is, I would say, bold claim, my favorite DC Comics character if I had to pick one. And it's like, of course, we're not counting Batman because Batman is everyone's favorite. But like Huntress is my favorite. There's so much darkness and complexity there, and it's easy to compare her to Daredevil because they both have like the Catholicism thing going on, but her family is actually a mob family, so they're able to do a little bit more with that. That's interesting to me. And her costume almost always seems to involve some kind of like midriff being exposed. And for a really long time, it was just, here are her entire abs, like just everything. And I'm like, she's running around at night. She's running around at night. That is just pale skin that light is going to bounce off of and betray her location. What are you doing? But so for this costume redesign, she has just a slip of belly showing. And I was looking at it and decided I'm not mad because high waist pants and crop tops are in right now. So I've decided that this was an intentional trendy take on Huntress's costume, and I will not be mad about it unless I see it in action and all of a sudden they're just showing like ass shots of her or something. But you know, I hope it'll be good.
Maybe progress just from a cover. Maybe we're seeing some progress. Fingers crossed. Well, Elsa, what about you? What are you excited for? It's coming out in the near future.
So I live in a like remote place, and I don't have a comic book store around me. Like the first one is like maybe 2 hours away.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
yeah, I haven't picked up monthly issues in a long time. Basically, since I left Paris. Okay. Where I used to like go every week and pick up my comics. So now I will wait for trades to come out, or I will buy graphic novels. So I don't buy monthly issues anymore, and also like I don't have the space to store them. Right. They take up a lot of space. So I don't have anything. I don't have a pull list anymore. I used to love that, but I don't. But in terms of what is coming out, I was wondering if there was a new Deadly Class like trade that maybe I haven't read. So I would like to order that. I've read 5 so far. Do you know if there's like one more or?
I think that there is, 6, 7, and 8.
Oh,
I think
really?
there's a couple
that
more
is-
volumes,
that
actually.
series is
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
actually,
I have
6, 7,
to-
8, and 9.
Great. So I will pick that up. I'm excited for that. And I don't tend to follow what is coming out, really. I should,
Gotcha.
I guess. But I just, whenever I see like a book popping up on my either Instagram or Twitter, often it's a book that came out a while ago, and I will get them, because it interests me. But I don't really follow. I follow artists though, so I know when their books are coming out.
Gotcha.
But I tend to buy what is catching my eye at the moment, and it's rarely something that just came out. Although I did just get the trade for Blue and Green.
Oh, that book was absolutely fantastic. If you haven't read it yet, I wish you the best of luck. That book is incredible.
I have read the first issue of it.
Okay.
And I don't know why I needed to process it, so I put the trade down, and I will get back to it. But it started off very interestingly. I'm very curious about where this is going. The art is just stunning, and the writing is excellent. The prose is great. I love the captions, the use of captions.
Mm-hmm. The whole design of that book is incredible. I mean, just every page is stunning.
I am unnerved by the cover.
Yes, I think it's supposed to unnerve you.
Yeah,
I think it's a point. I actually did a cover for one of the issues, a variant cover, I think it was. So
nice.
Yeah. A while back, I did a horror because that's obviously the theme. And going back to what you were saying about the art, and I'm very, because my art is so like on the opposite of the art spectrum of what the artist is doing. I'm I'm trying to wrap my head around how, they work, because I can understand pencils, inks, colors, but it seems like for work like his work is like, how does it go about building a page? Because it seems like it's so artsy, like painterly. It seems so very different than just your regular comic book process. So I have no idea how he goes about creating those pages. I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I got to imagine you're just sitting here trying to reverse engineer just everything on some of these pages. Because even as a reader, I'm floored with the mixed amount of like types of art that appear on those pages. It reminds me almost of like Marco Rudy does this in a lot of his books, where it seems like he's using 2 or 3 different types of like media to create his book. Like it'll be charcoals, and then it'll be pencils and inks, and then it'll be clear watercolors and stuff. And it's like, and that's all the stuff that I'm just kind of familiar with. I'm not even that artsy of a person,
Yeah. Martin Simmons does that too.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of those, pictures of some of his originals, and it's like stunning. You would think this is digital, but no, this is all on a page on original art. It looks incredible.
Yeah, I have to imagine the scanning process for those is a whole problem.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Right. Well, for me, I guess before I get into my picks, I want to shout out some of the folks on Discord who are listening. Danny said their pick was Reptile number 1. BN said their pick was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin number 3. And Cinco said their pick was Black Panther number 25. For me this week, I'm excited for The Blue Flame number 1. Particularly because it's from Vault, but also because it's written by Christopher Cantwell with art by Adam Gorham and K. Michael Russell. I'm kind of perplexed because Vault Comics doing a superhero book feels like a strange choice given all the other books that they do. I figure eventually comic book publishers, you're going to do a superhero book. But when it comes to Vault Comics, I know that whatever they're doing, it's usually a very different take on whatever genre they're publishing. So I'm excited to see what Cantwell's doing with this. It seems like the premise of the book has got a pretty interesting twist. There is this superhero called the Blue Flame. We don't really know who they are. We don't know why they've had multiple, I guess, careers or paths in life. Like they were an HVAC worker, and then they were a superhero, and then they were this, and then they were that. And now I guess the premise of the story is that they need to prove to the universe that humanity is worth saving. So whatever that's going to mean for this book, Seems like there's a lot that can be unpacked there. I'm all for it. And again, it's Vault Comics, so you're always going to get something pretty interesting from them. So I'm really excited to see where this book is going to go. But yeah, that's my pick for this week. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk to Elsa a little bit more about her YouTube channel and a bunch of other things that she's got going on. So we'll be back in just a minute. For our show this week, as I said, we're talking to Elsa Charretier about her YouTube series and everything that she's been doing on the internet over the last couple of years, including an incredibly successful Kickstarter. So I guess, Elsa, to get us started, how did this YouTube series, you kind of told us a little bit about it in the start of the show, like how did this all come to be? What drove you to like start this YouTube channel where you're breaking down comics and talking about books in a book club? Where did it all come from with you and your partner?
Okay, so it's not a long story, but it started a few months ago. During our Kickstarter campaign, we had one of the stretch goals was to put together a con at home, because it was like midway through the pandemic and people were sad about not going. It was in the fall and people were like, oh, I miss shows that we usually go to during fall. Mm-hmm. And so we did that. It was a 2-day event online where I, sketched and took questions and had guests. And so it was fantastic. Pierrick handled the whole, basically he directed like a live TV show. It was incredible. And and he had a lot of fun doing that. And I did too, but he was like, oh, I love this so much, because he started out as he wanted to become a director. That was his initial. Yeah, he went to film school, and so that was before moving on to comics and writing comics. That was what he wanted to do, and I think that doing the con at home kind of awake that part of him that had been sleeping for the past few years. And so it was like, I want to do a YouTube channel. I think that we could do, I know the technical aspects of things. I could put something really nice together. Do you want to, write text and break down comics? There is, I don't think there are any YouTube channels that are doing what we want to do, the way we want to do it. So what do you think? And I thought that was a great idea. So we started that in November. I think that we started shooting the first episodes in November, and we didn't release any of it until I think it was April, like beginning of April, because it took that much time to figure out everything and make sure that everything was perfect, because Pierrick is a perfectionist in the true sense of the term. Like really, it's not at random that a lot of people and basically everyone looking at the channel is saying, oh my God, the production is incredible. It's because he spent so much time researching and catching up to things that he hadn't been following, like the lightning and all of that. And so he worked like crazy for like 6 months before we even started really launching the channel. So that's basically how it happened.
That definitely answers my first question, which was going to be, oh yeah, this is so clearly high production values. You had a very intentional rollout. Like you could have just started recording on your phone and said, this is fine, and posted it. But you didn't. You decided to make it this really, like, there's zooms, there's like graphic elements moving behind you on the screen, there's projections on the walls while you're sketching. And I was just watching it and thinking, yes, of course one must become a patron of this. This doesn't just happen.
Well, I mean, along those same lines, I was overall just like floored by, like, I think you see a lot of YouTubers who will grow into a level of where I think your show is at from the get-go, or from where your channel's at from the get-go, as they learn more and more. And it clearly, you the two of you have studied the craft, and I made sure that you're highlighting the correct things while things are being spoken. Like the editing in a lot of your videos when you're doing page breakdowns just has blown my mind, like in terms of getting me to think more about comic books and thinking about page layouts and thinking about intentional pieces of things that are on the page. Because I think, you know, as readers, we take a lot of things for granted, and you highlighting things like the Hawkeye breakdown is the one that really sticks out in my mind. Just talking about the way that lines are used to draw your attention as a reader. And I noticed since watching those videos, I'm starting to see little bits and pieces of those, and understanding why my eyes are doing the thing that they're doing. Like, I was reading a book the other day and I noticed that the word bubbles were kind of out of order, but when I read the page, it didn't seem out of order. And I noticed that there were very quote unquote hidden, you know, directional guidelines to draw me back upwards, you know, on the page to read the last word bubble in the correct order. And I'm blown away that artists are thinking about that. And so seeing you break things down like that on your channel is just incredible to me. I really, really enjoy it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
It felt like being let in on a secret code. And actually that episode made me so mad because my reaction was, what do you mean artists are manipulating me and mind controlling me?
It's funny because you know, as an artist, I do that every day. It's my job, and of course I know most of those techniques. And I had a moment where I was like, but probably no one that doesn't work in comics actually know them. It you know, it's natural for me, but it turns out it is not for a lot of people, because you know, when you don't have to do this for a living, you can just read and enjoy comics without having to think about all of this, because you don't need to. And it's good. You should enjoy a book and not seeing, you know, the wheels and all of the behind the scenes that could sometimes, in a way, take you out of the story. So it's good that you don't see them as a reader. Right. But I think that there was some... you know, there was an empty space on comic book YouTube on that. Some channels do that, but they don't, and they probably can't, because again, we're two. They can't put together videos like that because it's a huge amount of work. Right. And a working artist is never going to be able to do that by themselves. It's impossible. Even handling the writing part, just that is really hard with the comic books and all the work that I'm doing on the side as a professional artist. So of course, no one can do what we do because we're two.
Right. And, you know, that was going to lead me to my next question, which was, you know, what does the production process look like? You know, you said you do writing, but Pierre does a lot of the everything else. What does that everything else look like from like start to finish, especially when you're saying, you know, you guys were filming things, you know, and making things back in like December and they're launching in April. What does the planning look like for like maybe a single video?
So ideally, and it hasn't been ideal so far, because, you know, we're still in the process of making it part of our routine, and it's hard. So we had a few videos ahead, you know, that were done, because we knew that when we launched, it would be hard to get into a rhythm. But what we would like to do starting a couple of weeks from now is taking a week and a half to like film everything and film like a couple shows because we have different type of shows. We have a book club, like you said, we have case studies, and all of those shows have a different setup, and the setups and the lighting take a lot of time to like just build and put together and make it work. So when you have to build a set for just the one show, it's a waste of time. What we should do is like film 2 or 3 in the same set. And we haven't been able to do that because I haven't been able to write them ahead because I don't have enough time. So what we will be doing is like film everything over a week and a half. But to go back to your question and answer it a bit more precisely. So what we'll do is we'll figure out what we want to do. Like this case study, for example, is going to be about this or that book. I will. Oh,
I thought we were going to get an exclusive right here.
I'm thinking about one. We are going to be doing an Akira case study at some point.
Oh my!
because of course, so we will, I don't know if it's going to be the next one but it will happen. I've started writing something. I'm not happy with it, so I'm going to toss it and start over. Also, there is a lot of that, which doesn't help.
Well, I mean, it does. I will say, like, the quality of the videos that we've seen, it's proof. Like, you're not going to get it on the first, shot. But from what ends up being the end of that process, I mean, all the videos are great so far. So, if that's what you got to do, I'm all for it.
The first case study that we did, which was the Hawkeye, we filmed it 3 different times over the course of 2 weeks, and it was like, this is not good enough. The lighting is not good enough. My delivery lacks maybe dynamism, or and we tossed shows after shows. It was like, we are never going to launch. Eventually we got into a groove, and so now we keep what we shoot. Most of them.
I see.
So once we decide on what we do, I will write it, and Pierre will start thinking about a way to film it, because of course, as a creative person, even though we're doing specific shows that are, series of the same shows, it's also, I don't want it to become boring for him, and he doesn't want to. So he needs to create every time and find new things to add or a twist on the show, all of these things. So he will start thinking about this ahead while I write. And then when I'm ready, we build the set and we shoot. And after that, I go back to my stuff. If we need to record a voiceover, we will record that on the day that we shoot. I will go back to drawing my comics, and then he will edit, handle the sound, and everything that you need to do to edit a YouTube video. And it's a lot of work.
So with your process with writing what you want to convey in each episode, one of the things that I found most interesting about your channel is the what if sequences, where either you're taking an existing comic book page and saying, I could convey this information in these other ways, or whether it's your film adaptation videos where you're translating a film scene to a comic book page and saying, I could draw it this way, or I could draw it this way, and kind of going through that thought process. When you're brainstorming for those segments, like, do you just have pages and pages and pages covered with little panels of your concepts, and then you just end up picking the ones that you think the work best to show some examples? Like, what does that process look like?
Not necessarily. Usually what you see on the screen or on the video is the ones that I found. So there is not a huge amount of stuff that don't get, or that get tossed away, because it's principles that I know and that I know work. So what I found, I put in there. It's something that I do, as when I lay out my pages, I will do alternate versions of panels. So that's why I put that in there, because that's just what I do to make sure that it's the right shot, it's the right framing, it's the right angle, all of that. I do alternate versions of panels for me. So when I analyze someone else's work, I will do that, and that helps me understand why this specific panel, the one that made it in the page, was the right one.
So in these YouTube videos, we are truly seeing your process just applied to different things.
Yes, basically. And that's also one of the motivation of that channel, is it's stuff that I do on my spare time. The figuring out the balance of black and white, or just penciling pages that I see on a book that I love, to try and understand the eye flow and all of that. I did that for years and years, and still do it, maybe to a lesser degree now, to improve. And so it felt natural for me to just write them and film them.
I do love that you do share this appreciation for different artists and different techniques on your channel. I feel like a recurring theme with people saying, well, how can I break into comics? And the answer from creators is always make comics.
Yeah.
You want to draw. You want to write.
It's because it's people get confused with art. They think that art is a talent. And I don't think it is. No one would ask like a carpenter, how do I break into carpentry? You have to build stuff, out of wood. And that's the only way that you're going to get better and find a job. And it's the same with art. And because it's a career in art is so romanticized, people imagine that there is some kind of like key or secret that you need to be in to break in. But no, you just have to do it until you're good enough to be seen by an editor or decide that you want to do it on your own. But the only way to get better is just to do it again and again and again.
Nobody wants to hear that. Everyone just wants the secret formula.
Yeah. And you know what? I listened to, I can't remember who it was because I listened to interviews of artists, and I'm not specifically talking about comic book artists, but singers or musicians and all of that. And it's really interesting for me to understand their perspective. And someone said something, someone was asking that artist, that musician, but life is hard. How do I get over roadblocks? How can I? Because sometimes people will want to, discourage you from doing what you want to do. And she said, just let it. If it can keep you from your dream, it's not really your dream. If you have an alternative, or if you think that this doesn't work out, I can always do this, then maybe art is not for you. Because I really believe, and it can feel maybe harsh to say it that way, and I'm sorry if it come across as harsh. But art and the art world is so hard that if you have an alternate, another option to make a living that you feel comfortable with, then you're going to go that route, because art is really, really hard, and myself, like a lot of other artists that I know, I know that I wouldn't have been able to do anything else but art. Like, I am not capable of having a regular job. Before I became an artist, I got fired of the jobs that I had, like after a couple of weeks, because I just can't do it. And so I
Not
had
about that 9-to-5 life.
No, I had just had no other choice than just do the art and until it works, because I wouldn't be able to hold like a regular job. I'm not capable of it. I don't know why. It just is. And so that's why for me, it was in a way easy, because it was just my only option. I don't know why I'm saying this, because I don't think that was the question, but I
it's
very insightful.
It's so interesting because, Mike and I have worked with people who, like, they have a day job and then they do their art on their free time. And so hearing the point of view of, no, there's art or there's nothing, and you're very clearly doing a lot of different things to make sure that art can stay your career and something that keeps a roof over your head.
I want to make a distinction when you were talking about people who hold a job and have art, whether comics or anything else, as maybe a paid hobby. They do some, art, but they don't rely solely on it to live. I think that's great. I think that, I know a lot of creators who do that. They are very brave because they have a job. And then on top of that, they create. And I think that's great. And I don't see it as, you're never going to be able to be an artist full time because you have a job, because they are okay with the idea of art being just a part-time thing. You know what I mean? It's a distinction. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it if you're okay with it, but saying that, I want to make art, but it's hard. I don't know what to do. All of those things.
I don't have the time. I don't have the energy.
Yes,
I don't have any ideas.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, it's hard. It's and part of why, if I made a video on that, how I started doing comics professionally, and when I realized that I liked to draw and I wanted to draw for a living, I went back to live with my parents because I knew myself and I knew that I would never be able to have a day job and do comics at the same time. And the only option was, to live rent free. So that's, right. But I know creators who do that. You have a job and they can make it work. But I mean, it's, I'm in awe of people who can do that.
Yeah. I think, it's definitely an interesting perspective, because I think I totally understand where you're getting at. It's like, you need to have that drive or something, you can't just fall back and say like, well, this is too challenging, I guess I can't do it. Because like you said, like that road.
Okay. It's totally okay. If it doesn't end up being a career, it can just be a very fulfilling hobby. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you accept it.
Right.
There's no one right or wrong way to be involved with art.
Absolutely.
Of course. It's not because you're not paid that you're not an artist. I felt I was an artist before I got paid. It's just, frame of mind. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong about deciding, I don't think I can fit into that industry, or I think it's too hard and I just want to create comics on my own and have a job, and that's great.
Definitely. I do want to try to bring it back to the channel. Just a little bit. Just
it's always a challenge.
No, I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it, because I think that's, like you said, you had a video about this, which I think is a very vulnerable thing to put out there, to tell your story, where you had to humble yourself. You had to go out there and say like, I know I want to do this, so therefore I need to kind of like step back and I need to build up my entire portfolio of things. Like, I think that's super great for people. And I think that this is like a really interesting message, which kind of segues into the other question that I had of like, once cons eventually, fingers crossed, hopefully, all start back up and stuff, do you think you'll take this channel on the road to try to like push that message or encourage people to like keep, trying to break into the arts and all that kind of stuff, like with a panel to, explain that story, and then also kind of maybe do things that you would do on the channel, maybe at a panel or something like that?
Wow, that would be hard. I don't see myself doing this live just yet.
Okay.
Although it is a good idea. Yeah, I could see. But it would be sort of a masterclass. Some artists do that. I don't feel quite ready for that. Sure. Just yet. But one of the goals that we have, and it's tied up to the Patreon too, is that at some point we would like to go on the road and see artists in their studios instead of doing this over Zoom, and actually go visit their studio and travel across the globe and talk to them in their work environment. That's one of the goals that we have. So yeah, definitely. There will be a component of traveling in the channel in the month to come.
Yeah, I think that would be fascinating, if only because I know I've seen some artist studios, like, through YouTube clips and other things, like other interviews and stuff, but to actually get that breakdown, talk like artist to artist and stuff, and even just to do something with the perspective that your channel offers, I think would be really, really exciting.
We were thinking about maybe doing something like the case studies, so breaking down either a page or a panel, and have the artists that we're visiting choose that page or that panel and doing that with them. That could be fun.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Also, to come back to the production values, like Mike has said, sometimes you see some glimpses of artist studios or however much people want to share about their spaces on social media. But with your channel's production values, it's just going to heighten the whole experience for everybody.
Yeah, that would be the challenging part, because when you travel, you can't, bring your lights and reflectors. So that would be challenging to achieve like a professional look without all the equipment that we have back at the studio. It can be done, of course.
Just you and Perrick with just like huge backpacks full of lights and cameras and stuff like that, just bursting into giant studios. So. Well, we're sort of running out of tape here. I don't know, Kara, if you had anything else you wanted to get into, or one more question you wanted to ask before we wrap up here.
Well, first, just a thank you for creating your channel, because listeners to the show know that I don't really focus on art when I'm reading comics. It just, my eyes go. I know. My eyes go.
Oh my God.
My eyes go straight to the words. So watching your channel was really helpful for me in terms of my visual literacy of understanding the breakdowns of the pages. So I personally found that very enlightening, and thank you. Please keep making videos. They're really helpful.
Thank you. And, we will.
And on our break, we were talking about your wardrobe on the show a little bit, and I said I can't ask you this question. It's so sexist. Like, would we think to ask a dude, how did you pick your wardrobe for this show? But I just kept staring at your wardrobe the whole time because it was so good.
If it can make you feel better, like I said, it's a dude who picked out the clothes, so it's not really a sexist question to me, because I didn't pick out the clothes. Pierre did. He's way better at it than I am. He dresses me, basically.
Really is the whole director of the vision of the aesthetics for it.
Like I said, I just write the text and just sit in where he tells me to, and wear what he tells me to, which is fine by me. I'm happy to comply.
That's great. You're both working to your strengths, and it's creating a great product. Where can our listeners find your YouTube page and your Patreon page? So my YouTube page is on my Twitter. I think it's one of them, like pin tweet, or and you just Google my I guess you can't say Google when you're in YouTube, but just type in my name when you're in YouTube and you'll find it. And my Patreon is also linked on my Twitter.
Yeah, we'll grab links for that stuff and drop it in the show notes. And folks can find you. Where can people find you on Twitter and the rest of the internet? Under my name,
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
As easy, and I'm not extremely present on social media. I would like to be more, but
but you're working.
I will
Very
try
busy,
to be a bit more present and all of that, but it's another thing to do.
I do want to say, because we do have a bunch of our listeners on our Discord in our live room, and they've been screaming in caps lock how much they loved your second art book. So I wanted to make sure I was passing that along.
That is so great to hear. Thank you so much. It has been quite a ride. The campaign was huge, so naturally the fulfilling was a nightmare. So I'm really happy that people got their book and they're happy about it.
Yep.
Yeah, people are very, very excited. One of our listeners did an unboxing video, I think, and he was floored by the Harley print that he got.
I saw that video. That made my day. Cool. That just made my day. It was so sweet. The hands on his cheeks, I was like, oh, this is so great.
I think he'll be very excited to hear that. Well, Elsa, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been amazing. We're so happy we got to talk to you again. And, good luck with the rest of the YouTube stuff. I can't wait to see the next big project you're working on. Is there another volume of November coming out that I'm just not aware of, or am I making that up in my head?
The 4 volume of November are out. So November is done with. And I have a new ongoing series that is coming out at Image in the fall, and this is new, and this is going to be great.
Oh, I'm very excited. That's fantastic. Well, don't forget, folks, you can follow the rest of us on Twitter. You can follow Kara at KaraSSam. You can follow me at Mike Rappin, and you can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at IRCB Podcast, where we post pretty regularly, at least our stories.
This episode first aired on Patreon and is possible because of our wonderful patrons. Join today for exclusive series like IRCB Movie Club, Saga of Saga, and more. Join now at patreon.com/IRCB podcast. And if you haven't already, please rate and review our show 5 stars, right? On Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really does help us spread the word about IRCB.
You can join our Discord today to listen to episodes live, talk about comic books, talk about the Aliens RPG, which is a big deal for us, apparently, as well as many other things. That's just a quick jab at our friend Nick. And make sure you can come listen to episodes live and come to our monthly hangouts that we do. That's at ircbpodcast.com/Discord. And it would help us a lot if you told your friends and your local comic book shop about our show. Infinity Shred does all of our music. They are the best band in the universe. I want to thank Xander for editing us and making us just sound so fantastic. What a guy. I want to say thanks to Elsa again for being on the show, and thank you to Kara for being here with me to talk. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you.